Hey, everybody, welcome back to 100% Uptime, a podcast by P2P Labs featuring Ken and Dave. And of course, I'm Ken Adams and joined today by Dave George, co-founder and CEO of P2P Labs. Hey, Dave, who is our special guest today?
Well, Ken, today we're joined by Klaus Haertel. Klaus is the Director of Global Channel and Alliances at PortaOne. Let me give you a little color, Ken. PortaOne has been a backbone of the telecom industry for well over 25 years, empowering service providers, including my family's ILEC, which you and I worked at.
Yes.
But they're really known for like worldwide for things like billing and telecom infrastructure, unified communications. Really, they run the whole gamut for a CSP or an MVNO for that matter. And Klaus, who's joined us here today, he sits right at the center of that global ecosystem, driving partnerships, Klaus, growth, and strategy across the industry. So with that, welcome to 100% Uptime.
Yeah, thank you both to you, Dave and Ken. Pleasure to be here.
Oh, we're very happy to have you, Klaus. So,
yes, we are.
Klaus, let's start with your personal story. Let's start with your beginning in technology and communications. Thinking back, what drew you into this industry, into this space?
Yeah, it's funny. It's a good question because we sometimes tend to forget sort of how it all started, and it's oftentimes actually a really interesting story. I mean, I think it's pretty funny. So, I straight out of university, I worked in a couple tech companies locally here in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, focusing more on the sort of web development side. In school, in university, I took business and computing science, which was funny because oftentimes to the business folks, I was the techie, the nerd, and for the computing science guy, I was the business guy. So I was always kind of like in between groups. And so anyway, I was at a couple tech companies there, and then one of my friends that I used to be on the swim team with in university, he calls me up and he says, "Look, I knew he had started a sales job with this young organization." And so he calls me up and he says, "Look, I don't know what I'm selling. I need help. And there's an open position, you're single, you get to travel lots. Why don't you apply?" So that's how I ended up at PortaOne. So I started as a trainer doing pre-sales demos, and I trained our customers back in 2006. I started. Yeah.
Wow. 2006. Wow. So looking back at your career,
20 years.
What were the moments or the decisions that you think shaped you becoming eventually, what you are today, which is in charge of, global channel and alliances though, right? So you were a trainer, right? Back in 2006. What was that evolution that got you to really want to work with partners across the entire globe?
Yeah. I think a couple things. I mean, even just, thinking back to being a trainer, I was in the shoes of being able to actually one of the few people at PortaOne at the time having the opportunity to actually meet customers face to face, right? I mean, yes, we would go to trade shows, we would meet prospects, but a lot of our colleagues, especially in technical support or development, they would never meet customers. So I would be able to actually train customers face to face. I would travel to their offices, see how they do business, who they engage with, who they partner with, and so on. So that was sort of one part that I think shaped having a bit of an understanding and appreciation for how our customers do business with, how important it is to have partners to rely on. And I think that sort of shaped the journey at PortaOne throughout the years to then, sort of end up in a partnership or alliances role. I mean, from the trainer, I then went into sort of the direct sales role. and then moved into a more the partnership and indirect sales role.
Mm-hmm.
Listening to that, you've been there now 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to ask the question, what stood out about PortaOne 20 years ago, but also 10 years ago and even 5 years ago? Because nowadays, many people would say that, if they stay at a company more than 4 years, that's considered a long time in the industry, so to speak, or at a company. So what was that? Thinking back, what was those defining little moments where you're like, I'm staying here, I like this company? What is it about PortaOne, from a employer-employee concept that really shines?
It's a great question. I think it's not, to me, it's not sort of the big decision points. Hey, I'm going to stay here for 15 years or so. I think it's the little things. The parts about PortaOne as an organization that I always really liked is it's a mature organization in a sense of management style. So once they get to know you, they trust you. They trust you to make the right decision for the company, and it's a very shallow management structure. There aren't any sort of big hierarchies to speak of. Everybody knows everybody in a sense. I mean, obviously we've grown over the years, so there's now a larger headcount of maybe 200 to 300 people, but we're still, even Andre as a CEO and Roman, they're more my colleagues and peers, and I think that's always been that way, and I think that's really something that's standing out to me. And the second part, Dave, and I think that goes to the field of telecoms more closely, is I think PortaOne's always been good at sort of maybe not reinventing itself, but staying at the pulse of what our customers need and being very close to, what the industry asks for. And I mean, that's the one thing that I think allowed us to stay relevant over those 20, 25 years, right? I mean, if you don't do it, then you're not going to be around for that long.
Right. Yeah, of course.
So for our audience, Klaus, we might have got ahead of ourselves by talking about PortaOne, and some of them may not be aware of, what PortaOne is. So can you, briefly kind of tell us, how did the company get started 25 plus years ago? And what was the original problem or problems that it was trying to solve in its origin story?
Yeah. So PortaOne at the basic is a software development company. So we're developing solutions for the telco industry in the early days. And I joined PortaOne not right at the very start, but shortly after. So maybe 3-4 years after things got really started. So at the start, a lot of the company founders were working for Telenor in Norway, and they were essentially building a billing system for prepaid calling cards or for prepaid businesses. And as it sometimes happened with
business model, I'm sorry, but I remember that business model.
Oh yeah,
yeah. But and as it happens, I mean, with corporate restructuring, I think the project lost internal traction at the company, and the founders decided they still saw a gap, or they still saw an opportunity. So they basically took that idea and built PortaOne as a billing company for these business services. And then shortly after, we actually found, so we not only do billing, which we obviously still do to this day, and I think at the core, our software has always been about billing and making sure that services are accounted for in real time and so on. But shortly after PortaOne was founded, we found that we ended up spending a lot of time developing integrations to soft switches that customers asked us for, the various open source, Asterisk, and whatnot, whatever was around at the time.
Right.
And so we quite quickly understood that it would actually be quite worthwhile for us to have our own soft switch. So that's when and I think that's always been our unique value to the market, that we said, look, with us, you don't have to spend or worry about the integration between your voice infrastructure and your billing or business infrastructure. To us, it's always been one. and that has unique advantages, obviously.
So let's dive into that, Klaus. Let's talk about billing and
Sure.
operations. As someone who has a pedigree in telecom as well, and Ken, please chime in as well. To me, BSS and OSS can always feel kind of like this massive thing that's complex, but it's kind of in the back office. I don't even know if most people even fully understand BSS and OSS. So it becomes this heavy thing that's in an organization. But PortaOne has built the entire business unit around BSS and OSS. Can you explain for our audience, how can billing actually become a competitive advantage when done correctly for service providers? I think that's something that I think would really differentiate what PortaOne's doing.
Yeah, it's a good one. I think I would probably, thinking about your question, I would probably explain it by what if you don't do it this way? So what I've oftentimes seen during training is people would, or customers that just bought our software platform, they would explain to me how they ran their business beforehand. And oftentimes, I mean, not surprisingly, I'm sure, you would have all sorts of different ways people would have done it. So they had let's say an open source switch, and they would export usage, maybe sometime in spreadsheets or sometimes into a self-built database, that they would, and then, all sorts of things would happen is the engineer would switch on a certain service on the voice infrastructure for a customer, but then maybe forgot to inform his colleagues on the business side, hey, we need to charge these guys for it. Right. So customers would end up with services they weren't supposed to be using, or they weren't supposed to be, they weren't built for. And then that sort of thing simply cannot happen with a platform like ours, because you'd always start on the business side, and then it automatically gets provisioned to the voice infrastructure. So those are some pretty interesting ways of people running the business. But you know what? I get it, because it's obviously organically, right? People start small. They start with what works in the early days, and then sometimes they get a year, 2 years, 5 years down the road, and it's still working, sort of, but it's also not. Yeah.
But the leakage keeps getting larger, right?
Right.
And you can only bury your head in the sand so often. So that's interesting. Obviously, they can find leakage in what they're doing with the PortaOne. But now let's talk about some new technologies that still tie into BSS and OSS. IoT, energy metering for electric cars, AI, customer experience software, like CX software. And even just any kind of metered service or bundled service, or some other solution that the PortaOne service provider is utilizing. How is PortaOne helping them to rethink monetization? Another way of, I guess, asking would be, what challenges does PortaOne solve that these new services are creating? What have you seen some of your, service provider partners do with the PortaOne billing and or OSS, side of the platform that's different than most telecom providers?
Here, I'll give you, I think I have the perfect sort of example, or perfect little story. So we used to do customer conferences before the war in Ukraine. A lot of our tech team is in Ukraine and still are. So before the war had started, we would run annual customer conferences, and I truly hope that we'll soon get back to any sort of opportunity to do that again. So we ran a few customer conferences. So one of our customers from Brazil did a presentation, and he told us a story about how he was using Porta Billing in Brazil. And so what he explained to us was the following. So one of his customers is Johnny Walker, the whiskey brand in Brazil.
Yeah.
And apparently quite popular. You go to a bar in Sao Paulo, but what you do is because a single shot glass of Johnny Walker is expensive, what people do is they buy the whole bottle of Johnny Walker and then they leave it at the bar. So when they come back the next day, they drink from their bottle. So, but that's obviously not very ideal, because now you have to go back to the same bar every time, because that's where your bottle is. I mean, the bar owner will obviously like that, but to you, maybe you want to change things up, you want to go to a different bar. So what our customer ended up offering is, they said, look, why don't we have a small scale and we measure how much of the bottle you're drinking, and then we withdraw that from a virtual bottle and all connected in PortaBilling. So now you can go to any bar in Sao Paulo and drink from your virtual bottle of Johnny Walker, according to a metered rate of maybe, 2 reais for a shot glass of Johnny Walker. But what's interesting about this is it not only gives customers an opportunity, so it's like a win-win-win, because customers can now go to any bar that's connected to this sort of network, right? And there would be maybe a small SIM card in the scale. It would automatically communicate to the cloud and do it that way. But also it gives Johnny Walker as a brand direct access to the consumer.
That's
right.
Otherwise,
they would have no idea who's drinking my whiskey. They only see we're selling 5,000 bottles, but they don't know who's drinking their whiskey. So
that's a really cool use case.
Yeah, it's alcohol consumption subscription as a service.
I love it.
Through the PortaOne. That's pretty unique. I was expecting you to talk about maybe water metering or some other like I'll call it adjunct.
I mean, yeah. Look, I mean, you can obviously, nowadays with everyone trying to be healthy, but I mean, we all have our vices. But regardless, the concept still applies, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whether it be metering for a phone call that's going for 5 minutes, or whether it's metering for internet service or messages, or drinks from a Johnny Walker bottle, or electricity that you use to charge your electric vehicle. Or nowadays, obviously, I was just reading a blog article this morning about how Claude obviously withdrew support for AI tokens to third-party systems like ClaudeBot. And so now the cost optimizations for AI tokens is becoming more of a topic, because people realize it's expensive and it's not a free-for-all.
So staying with operations just a little bit here yet, from your perspective, what are the biggest operational hurdles or challenges telecom communications service providers face that maybe a lot of the outsiders, a lot of their customers, a lot of end users don't see, they don't realize?
I think to me it's clear cut. It's workflow automation with an integration. A lot of telcos have, probably organically, they have multiple systems, right? Because even with a sophisticated platform like ours that does a lot of things, we may not be great at various things that our platform does. I'll give you a concrete example. Let's say invoicing, or PortaBilling is obviously a billing platform, but we don't actually do accounting, because we do business in 80 different countries of the world, and we're not an accounting platform. So naturally, a telco will have 5, 10, maybe even larger telcos, 20 different systems, be it CRM, field force, you name it. So, and you need to make sure, if you want to operate efficiently, if you want to have visibility across your customers, I think the integration and making sure that platforms talk to each other is super important. Yeah, I think that's holding back a lot of organizations.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So thank you for that insight. I'm going to shift now to PortaOne a little bit here and ask you a question.
Mm-hmm.
In an industry where companies come and go, we've seen this over the years. what do you think has allowed PortaOne to not just remain relevant after 25 plus years, but is still continuing to grow? Like, what's helping its trajectory to continue to grow, unlike some other companies that are in the same space?
Yeah, I think there's probably, well, I would say two things again here. One is we've always really tried to stay close to our customers with an open dialogue, trying to engage. We have a proactive success team that has monthly calls with customers to learn about what's new, what's holding them back, what's in their market. And they're feeding that information back to our project management and development teams to make sure that we don't miss any important developments in regional markets. Because one thing we learned, again, as a global organization, I think it's been helpful. One thing we learned, if something specific pops up in one region of the world, let's say somewhere in Asia or South Africa or Brazil or in Europe or in the US, sooner or later it will pop up somewhere else, and sooner or later everybody will need it. And I think that's why I think we trained ourselves to really, if we get one inquiry about some odd thing that we've never heard about, sure, we might, laugh about it in a way. But if the second or the third person comes up and says the same thing, then we know there's something there. So I think staying close to the customer and listening really to what they need is the one thing. And I think just last week, for instance, we rolled out our new wish list and upvoting feature to customers, where they can use virtual Porta tokens to directly influence the development of what's coming up in the platform. And very much related to that, and that's the second thing, is our agile development cycle. So whenever customers request features or request development or work together, collaborate with us on certain things, it's not going to take 2 years, because we know, look, these guys, I mean, they want it all tomorrow, but
sure, everybody
the
wants it
realities
tonight,
are,
actually.
yes, exactly, right.
Yeah.
But at least, compared to other large telco infrastructure vendors, we're able to deliver things much more quickly than others are.
Yeah, I was actually, I'm glad you went into that, because I was going to ask if not. So something that I think makes you guys unique is your development cycles, and the teams that you guys assign to those. I was gonna ask if you could speak a little bit to that. Like, you guys have like this 6-week period, but even more so, the way that you do your releases and being able to use multiple versions of releases in PortaOne is, I think, a big
the dual version
differentiator for you
support,
guys.
Ken. Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Right. So
Yes.
how do you do that? Right? How do you keep up with those? I realize you have a lot of developers, but talk about that development process a little bit so everybody understands, why it's so good with you guys, actually.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously just slightly outside of what I'm directly involved with on a day-to-day basis, but I think I know enough, obviously, how it works. I know the team is very strict, so we use OKRs internally to determine what the focus is for the development calendar, in a sense. And then I know the team is also then very, very strict. I know, Ken, you mentioned 6 weeks. I think it's actually 7 weeks, but regardless of what the actual time frame is, they're very strict about, meaning each release or each sort of sub-release in a way is 7 weeks. And if a certain feature doesn't fit within that 7 weeks, then we'll break it up. We'll have to deliver it in phases. So basically do one phase first and then the following forward. The calendar is known, meaning, and we have not slipped. There has been, I think, even with the war, I think there was only 1 or maybe 2 instances where we had to postpone a scheduled release date by maybe a week or 2.
Okay.
But that's it. and
Yeah,
we've
that's
done
not
it now
bad.
for probably 8 to 10 years on,
Mhm.
that. So it's 7 weeks on a calendar. All the developers know it, and I think that just keeps us honest and keeps things small, right? Like that's the other thing. In any sort of large software development project,
Right.
it's a heavy lift. If the releases are too big, you can't manage it. So
Right.
we made that decision, or the tech team made the decision quite quickly to say, look, let's keep things small, let's keep them manageable, and then manage the risk that way.
Yeah, I imagine that helps a lot with scope creep as well. Like a lot, I think a
Yes.
lot of these, some of your competitors get caught up in that cycle where, oh, what we can quickly add this, because somebody, wanted it, but
Yeah.
now I've just delayed the release for another 3 weeks because something inherently goes wrong.
Yeah. It's
So,
you know what? It's not easy, and oftentimes it does lead to, you have to have some uncomfortable conversations, obviously, with
mhm,
customers, because um but it's in everybody's interest, in all of the
right.
customers' interest, that we stick to it. And yeah, of course, it leads sometimes to frustrations, and
Sure.
but
But
that's just what it takes.
Talk
Yeah.
about so
yeah,
so
totally get it.
Klaus, um, your role is essentially alliances, global channel. I think quite simply, it's partnerships as well, right?
Yeah.
Um, how has the role of global channel and alliances or partnerships, how has that changed in the last 20 years, or let's call it the last 10 years, since you've been kind of
Mhm.
doing that
Yeah.
role and really have your hands around that? Um, can you speak to what you've seen change, or the value of those alliances?
Sure.
Why you work with third parties, et cetera.
Mhm.
Just sort of go down that
Yeah,
rabbit hole.
absolutely. I think in the early days of sort of the partnership ecosystem, it would normally be, we would have one or maybe two types of partners that we would engage with, which would normally be uh, complementary technology solutions, like say media gateways, right? A lot of our customers would run our platform, but then they would have maybe a third-party media gateway that they needed to connect to the legacy telephone network,
Right.
or payment providers, merchant account providers, the Stripes of this world, and so on.
Uh-huh. Yep.
So that would be sort of the typical profile of the partnerships that PortaOne would have. And we obviously still have them to this day. But I think um, with sort of me starting in that role, I think we started realizing that it's actually much larger, and there is a lot of value in expanding that sort of definition of partnerships. So nowadays we work a lot with third-party solution providers. We work with app developers. We launched a marketplace for PortaOne customers, where third-party solution providers can feature and sell their offering that works well with the platform. And again, it's sort of a win-win-win for all parties, because it helps expose third-party solutions that work well with our platform to our customer base. I've always seen my role in helping PortaOne customers realize that there is value in trying to find value-added services to their customers, right? So trying to help them succeed in business, trying to get them new services, products that they can sell to their existing customer base. Because I mean, I would go to trade shows a lot of times, and then I would talk to customers, and they would always say, "Look, voice revenues are declining. What can we do? What are others doing around the world?"
Right.
And I said, "Look, there's a lot of sort of examples. The whole Teams integration with Cloud PBX. You can do the AI supported voice transcriptions, omni-channel. I know P2P.
Right.
You guys are having a omni-channel solution. And that's nothing we provide, but it works well with our platform, and it's valuable to all if you have an integrated solution stack that you can tap into.
Yeah, absolutely.
Question for you, Klaus. If you can think back, and if you're willing to share, what were some of the maybe the early mistakes that you made, or maybe it's even just common mistakes you see other partners making, in our ecosystem? Is there, something you could, if looking back, is there something you would say to them, hey, maybe you should attack it this way, or hey, as things evolved, it might be better to do it this, a certain way? Can you think back to that from your early days, if you will?
Yeah, tricky. I think maybe one that comes to mind is realizing that oftentimes sharing and collaborating has the potential to increase the pie for everybody. So what I've seen, and what I mean by that, is sometimes customers or partners would be concerned with their unique advantage in their specific market, and they would be unwilling to maybe share that with others. So they use our APIs in our platform, they build something on our platform and be successful, but not really wanting or not realizing that it would be valuable to share that maybe with others, to list it on a marketplace, make it available to other service providers around the world, because then they would sometimes think, well, if I make my unique advantage available to others, then maybe they start competing with me. But I actually don't see it that way. I think it grows the pie. It makes it more interesting to everybody. And so I think that's probably one thing I would mention. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. You mentioned marketplace. I know early on, a lot of companies would talk about a marketplace, but really they didn't have a robust marketplace. Can you speak to how PortaOne has been embracing a marketplace since you mentioned it?
Yeah, I think like anything we do, we try to stay away from trying to build something in a perfect way, and rather, or the approach that PortaOne oftentimes takes is building something small but incrementally, and then grow it over time to see how the market takes up on it. And so to give you a concrete example with our marketplace, we actually just started because yes, I have a technical background, but I'm not a developer. So we started cataloging, or I started cataloging partners and potential add-on solutions and so on. In the early days, we started cataloging that in Airtable. It's a great business tool, has a lot of flexibility around it. It's not that different from an actual database, but it's a tool that a business user can use. And you know what? Airtable still powers Avamart to this day. So it allows me as a business user to update fields, update descriptions, and so on. And then obviously now my engineering colleagues build a whole ecosystem around it: authentication, authorization, a billing API for Avamart products. So it's a quite sizable product now. But at the core, it's still powered by that Airtable.
Cool.
So, yeah.
That's okay. It's working.
And you know what? I must admit, I forgot a little bit your questions. I'm hoping.
No, you're doing.
Hoping,
you're doing fantastic,
hoping
Klaus. No, they're again. We want you to go down different paths.
Yeah.
What I heard you say there, though, I think would also be that by PortaOne building a robust marketplace, it builds trust for all the service providers. It's a place for them to go and trust that those products have been vetted to a certain degree. They're working with other service providers in other markets. So they're not re-engineering the wheel. They might have to add a few spokes, but it's already round, it's already working. Would you agree with that? Or do you think that
No, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think the goal had always been to make it as frictionless as possible. So meaning there's no big commitments. There's apps, all the apps you can try for 30 days. There's a no charge proof of concept or trial available. Yes, then the commercial subscription would start. But once again, that subscription, there's no commitment. You can cancel anytime. So it keeps the risk quite low. And I think it allows customers to say, you know what, I'm just going to give it a go, see if it works.
Yeah.
Right.
That's great.
Ken, did you want to add something? I'm sorry.
No, not that. I think it's a good way to get their feet wet for sure, and see the value. I think some of the other things too with that, it goes back to when they ask you, how are you seeing other people add additional margin, since we're losing margin on the voice side, right? And having this go-to marketplace where everything's already vetted, that's a great resource if I'm a provider. I don't have to worry about doing this myself or finding someone to develop the APIs for me. It's already been done by these partners in the marketplace, which speed the market, yay. So
yeah, and it's quite interesting. I mean, we obviously have a couple of our own solutions that we launched on the marketplace, like the Cloud PBX portal and PortaOne as a dialer. But we have a couple customers that are very, very active on, so one of our customers in Netherlands and the States, he's recently launched a plugin for payments, and that's very used in direct debit payments, for instance, in the European Union.
Cool.
And he's got a whole bunch of other things in the pipeline that he wants to launch. So yeah, I think it's a great way to encourage folks to, don't look at PortaOne or the things as a product, but look at it as an ecosystem, as a platform to help you succeed in business.
Right.
So let's stay on that topic then.
Sure.
We were talking about, changes in the telecom industry. PortaOne has been around for, again, quarter century. It's been through at least 2 or 3 iterations of transformative concepts, right? Analog, digital, IP, UCaaS. We could argue now it's AI and other things as well. What was the biggest transformation the company went through in that quarter century, since you were there for most of those years?
Interesting question. Probably the realization that a lot of communication services are mobile. So I just had this conversation with partners from Africa. A lot of the countries in Africa have, to some ways, it's an advantage. They're catching up with the developed markets. But they don't have the baggage of sort of legacy telecom infrastructure. So they can oftentimes, so that leapfrogging effect is really something that a lot of African countries use to their advantage. So they can roll out greenfield 5G deployments, and they don't have to worry about legacy 2G, 3G, 4G, at all. So it's a luxury in a way. But that exposes us to quite a few interesting business models, I think, that are active in that market. And then I think the second thing that's been quite a transformation at PortaOne is the migration to cloud. So this obviously not happened the last few years, but probably about 10 years ago. So we started engaging Oracle as our strategic partner so we use Oracle Cloud for some of our deployments, or a lot of deployments these days. But with that was obviously a transformation at PortaOne from a license revenue model to a subscription model, which, like it or not, it is very popular. A lot of folks like it. It doesn't mean the license will go away. A lot of customers obviously have our perpetual licenses. They don't expire. You have them, you paid for them, and you own them, and there's value in that. But a lot of, especially these days, with a lot of folks not 100% sure if a business plan is going to succeed, they're not willing to invest in a CapEx license. They're much more comfortable from a financing perspective to go with an OpEx model as subscription.
Yeah.
How does that weave itself into how you see the communications industry, evolving over the next few years? And, I might as well ask the question, where does AI come in? How does it play in that transformation? And while I'm on it, where do you see real, practical applications of AI, in our industry? Because everyone's talking about it, but you're right there. You're front and center. You're one of the big platforms, globally, that's providing the UCaaS underlying communications, infrastructure. Where do you see AI layering on top, and where is it going to make sense? Like we talked about BSS and OSS. Where do you see AI helping with BSS, OSS, for example?
Yeah. Operations. Like I think that's the clear-cut answer to me at the moment. Yes, there will be products and additional margins that folks will be able to come up with. But I think at the moment where we are, I think operations is the massive opportunity to streamline. I mean, just being able to use Claude connected to PortaBilling with an MCP server that is already on GitHub, or we're going to launch it on Marketplace very shortly.
Nice.
So being able to use natural language to create a new product or modify tariffs or use it for reporting. I mean, one of my colleagues built an absolute, because we use PortaBilling internally as well. So we're using our own product called Cloud Billing. We use it for all the add-on products that we have and the subscription that we're selling. And so one of my colleagues built a Claude dashboard, or now with Google Cloud and BigQuery, but basically to analyze profitability and what products are successful and so on. So I think from an operational point of view, especially for small organizations, we've always struggled a bit with training with our customers. So we would do the initial training, but as well as I do, staff leave, and we always had ways for customers to get retrained. But you'd be surprised by how little folks take advantage of that. And so new staff joins, they never got a formal training. So having a natural language way to operate the platform is very powerful.
Yeah.
It simplifies things for the staff, regardless of who they are.
Yeah,
for sure. When you look ahead, Klaus, what gives you the most optimism about where this industry is and where it's going?
I think looking ahead, what gives me optimism is looking back on where we came from, right? Like look at the last 20 years and the changes, the transformations that we all had to go through. So that gives me sort of the belief and the trust that we'll figure it out as well going forward. Also, what I wanted to mention, I think with clouds and cloud and subscription models as a business model that's by far the most popular these days, I think it places a much more heavy emphasis on partnerships. So if you're having a subscription, or say if you buy a license, you buy the license once. We sometimes had customers that engaged us 5 years later, and they said, "Hey, I'm still running your platform, your software release from 5 years ago," and we had never heard from them. We thought they were for sure bankrupt, and that's not a partnership. It's great. It's a testament to the software that it runs and it works. But with a subscription model, I think, and you're paying monthly or quarterly or annually, I think the emphasis is much more as looking at PortaOne as not your supplier, but as your partner. And I think
that's a good point.
And I think going forward, in order to be successful, you can't do it alone. You have to have trusted parties that can help you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think any company, regardless of size, can afford to go it alone.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's just too many moving parts. There's just
Mhm.
too many different verticals that require some specialization. So it makes sense to have partners, and I appreciate you, answering it that way. Looking back is the way to see where we've come from. So that's a great answer. My last question for you, Klaus. What is one thing in this evolving ecosystem that we're not talking about, but perhaps we should be?
Good question. You know what?
Thank you.
Nothing immediately jumps out to me, because honestly, with the breadth and sort of variety of customers that PortaOne has throughout the world, be it fixed wireless, MVNOs, IoT, M2M, to traditional telcos. We still have some Canadian customers that have some prepaid calling cards, if you will.
Sure.
So it's not completely gone. So I don't know. I feel like with having the that sort of customer base that's operating in so many different countries, I think we're seeing a lot. So I'm not sure there's one thing that our collective, mind has missed, maybe.
Especially
Out of curiosity,
the
how
reach.
how many countries is PortaOne in?
Over 80.
Over 80.
Wow.
So there's approximately
now, I
what,
don't
200
know. Now,
some?
I don't know. There might be a few dark horses where, just like I said just now, there might be a few where we sold a license 5 years ago, and we don't know if they're still in business or not. But we sold licenses and subscriptions to over 80 different countries.
Interesting. I want to go back. So probably final question here. So you started.
Final question.
You started with my final question. You started with right out of university, and you mentioned get to travel the world.
Yeah.
As someone who has also gone to many different countries specifically for business type environments or training or setting up new relationships and things like that, I could tell you a bunch of my own war stories about not looking up customs before I went there. And I don't mean customs going into the country. I mean, do I shake the person's hand? Do I hug them? Do I do this? Do I do that? Right? Give us you got to have a funny story, especially coming out of university and then getting thrown into international business. Is there anything that stands out when you first started that was like, oh man, I should have looked at this up first?
Yeah, there's definitely been quite a few places that I was lucky enough to go to, and in the way people do business. And I love that about telecom, how informal I think in a way it is. And even if you go to trade shows, it almost seems like a big family, and it's not like super stuffy. But honestly, Ken, I struggle a bit finding a good example. I mean, one thing was actually an eye opener to me was a training I had probably about 8 to 10 years ago. And it was actually not too far, but since Canada is such a massive country, it is a Canadian customer, but they're up in the far north and in Quebec and almost close to Baffin Island. So the way and the challenges that they have, like all construction material has to be flown up. There's no roads. And folks that work there, or technicians, they're on a sort of two week on, 2 week off cycle. So where they are 2 weeks up north and 2 weeks down in Montreal or wherever they live. And because they're the ones that climb up the poles at minus 50 degrees. And it's, I know you're in Florida, so
no thanks.
This is Celsius. So the way they do business, and just realizing there's no water lines in the ground because it would just freeze.
Yeah.
And everything is on stilts because the ground shifts and freezes and then thaws in the springtime. Yeah, just some pretty interesting stories.
I'm sure.
Thank you for sharing, Klaus. That's awesome.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Well, this has been a great episode, Klaus. Thanks for joining us today. We've had a great time talking to you and learning about you and PortaOne.
Most welcome.
Yeah, and to our audience, thanks for joining us. And hit those buttons, like and subscribe. You can also see what else we're up to at engagep2p.com. So until next time, everybody, keep building, keep leading, and as always, keep it at 100% uptime.